Okay, so yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the new ISCIA Seminar series on games and play. Um, just for the record or whatever, I'm Andrea Hurst, ISCIA Chair in Identities and Social Cohesion in Africa, and I'll be co-hosting this series with Dr. Jennalee Donian. More about her later. She is a postdoc at the moment with the chair. Um, she will be our first speaker of the series. But before I introduce her, I should just give you a little account of what the series is about. It emerges from quite a simple idea, quite provocative though too, that games and play are far more than entertainment and leisure. They are among the most powerful ways that society can teach rules, rehearse conflict, imagine alternatives, negotiate power. So, from playgrounds to boardrooms, from digital worlds to parliaments, and from satire to strategy. I mean, the games and play shape how we kind of compete with each other, how we cooperate, how we exclude people, how we actually belong, how we win, how we lose, how we start again. So through this seminar series, we want to explore all of these diverse and multiple spaces where play becomes meaningful and disruptive and transformative. Um, it can be a practice of survival, it can be a form of critique, it can be a space of healing, it can be a way of rehearsing new futures. So what is going to happen is that Jenna and I are going to co-host an already very exciting lineup of presenters across disciplines and contexts. And we're going to just try to explore all of these rich and sometimes unsettling terrains of games and play. Each presentation, as most of you know, but for those of you who are new, it's about 30 minutes, followed by about 30 minutes of discussion. And the sessions are recorded and uploaded to YouTube so that this conversation can kind of travel along beyond this space. Seminar will run weekly, as you know, from 1st of March to about 30th of October, and it'll be on Fridays online via Zoom. But you have to be aware that our time slots this year are going to be quite erratic because we have quite a few international time zones to negotiate. So keep an eye on the invitations, and we'll try and highlight the time. Just be aware of that. And this seminar series also feeds into a much bigger research and engagement project that we are only beginning at this stage to imagine. In previous initiatives, we've experimented with immersive and participatory forms of knowledge making. So, for example, in the Tributaries project, we curated a 3-day pilgrimage along the water's edge, and we invited participants to experience kind of landscapes and stories and ecological questions through this whole movement and encounter. And then more recently, our Horizon 2055 project took the form of a 3-day immersive city tour, exploring kind of possible urban futures and through these guided experiences and conversations all across the city. And for the next project, we're thinking of something similar but different again. We're thinking about a 3-day game. Perhaps something like the Amazing Race or a large-scale treasure hunt where participants move through spaces, they follow clues, they collaborate, compete, and discover all sorts of ideas along the way. So at the moment, we're very much in the ideas space about this. So this seminar series will also become a way of kind of thinking together how play, games, and imagination might help us shape this project. So in other words, watch this space. I think some interesting and exciting things might emerge. We will see. So it's particularly fitting in our discussion today that it turns to one of the most intriguing forms of play, and that's humor. Today's presentation explores how humor functions as a kind of a form of play that both builds and sometimes fractures social cohesion. Jenna's argument in the discussion to follow or presentation is quite simple but quite powerful, that all humor is play, but not all play is humorous. So if we want to understand how groups hold together or fall apart, we need to understand what different kinds of play do to our social bonds. Jenna is an Oppenheimer Memorial Trust postdoctoral fellow, absolute mouthful, hosted with the chair. And her research field is humor and comedy, and she's published several books as well as related articles and book chapters. Her first book was Taking Comedy Seriously, and that examines the work of South African comedians, Pieter-Dirk and Trevor. And she's since written Understanding Laughter and Humor with Jay Simon. And she and I have co-edited the collection Humour as Social Critique. So lots and lots of expertise on humor, and I'm very much looking forward to your presentation, Jenna. So welcome, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Andrea. Let me share my screen and let Gary just be on the sidelines to assist again if need be. And you can just let me know on your side when it is showing, Andrea.
Jenna, it's showing, but not in the right view, I don't think. Just try press from beginning. Let's see what happens.
I think I'm the most cursed person when it comes to technology, not even a joke.
Gary, what magic did you work before?
So just on the bottom right, there's a little screen. It looks like a projector screen.
So you know, there's not on my side now, Gary.
So at the
No, we can see it, so it should be there.
so she's
There you go.
Yeah,
Do you see it?
it's coming.
Okay. Slowly but surely.
Yeah, we know.
Oh,
Apologies, everyone. I'm not sure what is going on today.
there you go. Here it is. Perfect.
Hallelujah. Okay, let me start finally. Good afternoon, everyone. It seems like it's taken forever to get here, but let me begin. Today, I want to talk about games and play, but specifically how humor is a form of play that builds and sometimes fractures social cohesion. My argument, like Andrea mentioned, is simple, but I feel powerful. And that is that all humor is play, but not all play is humorous. And if we want to understand how groups hold together, we need to understand what different kinds of play do to our social bonds. Let me state 3 core claims up front. And these aren't so much claims as musings that I've been having for the past couple of weeks since Andrea told me about the seminar. First, all humor is play. It can be visual, physical, situational, but it's always operating in a frame that says this is a joke. So it's frame transgressive play. Second, not all play is humorous. You can train your body through drill repetition. You can sit in silence in a forest and experience rules that govern attention. You can play chess in deadly seriousness. These are all play, framed, rule-bound, bounded in time and space, but they're not funny at all. Third, different kinds of play build different kinds of cohesion. A family playing the same board game every Sunday is doing something very different from a group laughing at a political joke together. Both create bonds, but the bonds are different. They're building different kinds of social we's. Let's start with what play actually is. Anthropologist Gregory Bateson identified that play requires what he called a metacommunicative frame, a signal that says this is play. Throughout this presentation, I'll use the term frame to refer to this shared understanding of the rules and boundaries that govern our interaction. A frame is not the content, but the instruction for how to interpret the content. For example, when I'm playing chess with you, I'm sending constant signals. We're in a game now. The tone of voice, the board setup, the rules we both follow, all of that says interpret what's happening as play, not as a threat. Bateson identified two critical features of play. First, suspension without abolition. So play suspends ordinary rules, but doesn't erase them. For example, in chess, gravity still operates. The fact that I'm sitting across from you in actual physical space still matters. But chess rules now govern what counts as a legal move. Second, voluntary participation with real stakes. No one forces you to play chess. You could stand up and leave anytime you wanted to. But once you've agreed to play, you're bound by the game's logic. This is what Dutch cultural historian Johan Huizinga called the paradox of play. It's simultaneously non-serious, it's just a game, and utterly serious. The outcome matters within the frame, the rules matter, and the consequences within that game are real. You can lose. So, play creates a parallel reality with its own epistemology, its own rules for what counts as true, good, winning, fair, etc. This capacity to make rules visible and negotiable becomes crucial when we turn to humour, where the frame itself becomes the object of play. French sociologist Roger Caillois extended Huizinga's work by asking, what are the different types of play? He identified 4 categorical forms. Agon is competition. Chess, sports, games of skill, you're trying to win at something. Alia is chance. Roulette, dice, gambling, you're surrendering to fate and taking a chance. Mimicry is role play. Theatre, simulation, pretend play, you're becoming someone else. Illings is vertigo, disorientation, spinning, altered states. You're playing with your own perception. Here's the point. None of these are inherently humorous. You can play chess without laughing once. You can sit at a roulette table in complete silence. You can run a training simulation where nobody smiles. And you can spin until dizzy without finding it funny. Therefore, play is broader than humor. Humor is a subset of play, and not all play is humorous. So if humor is a subset of play, what makes humor distinctive? The thing is that humor is play with the frame itself. So you and I share a frame, a set of expectations about how the world works. We both know that politicians are supposed to behave with dignity. We both know certain words are inappropriate in formal settings. And we both have expectation about social rules, social roles, norms, and hierarchies. Humor works by invoking that shared frame as if we're still in normal reality, and then deliberately breaking it. But it only works if we both recognize what's been broken. The joke fails if I don't know the frame. It fails if I don't share the cultural reference. Humor scholar Simon Critchley puts it perfectly. He says, humor reveals the sheer contingency or arbitrariness of the rights in which we engage in social life. The punchline is funny precisely because it shows us that the social order we take as inevitable is actually contingent. It could be otherwise. But here's where it gets political. When humor breaks a frame, it doesn't just make us laugh. It reveals that the frame itself is constructed. not natural, not inevitable, but made by us. It shows us that the rules we thought were fixed are actually negotiable. Think about political satire. When a comedian mocks a politician's dignity, they're not just being funny. They're saying, hey, look, the authority you claim depends on us all agreeing to you with deference. Watch what happens when I refuse. The laughter is a moment of shared recognition. We all see through the performance now. But here's the critical distinction. Laughter always creates complicity and builds cohesion, but for whom and at whose expense? Laughter with refers to inside jokes, jokes that everyone in the group shares. This kind of laughter accelerates belonging. 5 minutes of genuine laughter creates a different bond than months of working together. Researchers call this bonding velocity. On the contrary, laughter at refers to mockery. So jokes where some people laugh at others positioned as the butt, as outside the group. This kind of laughter reinforces hierarchy. It marks people as other. When we laugh together at someone in power, we're building solidarity. But it's solidarity against something. We're creating an insider group, those of us who get the joke, and an outsider group, those who don't, or those being mocked. This is cohesion through exclusion. And here's the power dimension. Not everyone can break frames equally. A president can make a joke and remain president. A comedian who mocks the president has only their words. Humor becomes a weapon for those who lack institutional power. It's play, yes, but it's play with stakes. This is why authoritarian regimes censor comedians. This is why satire is political. Because when you control what can be laughed at, you control which frames can be questioned. So when I say different kinds of play build different kinds of cohesion, I ultimately mean this. Playing chess on Sunday builds a we through shared ritual. Laughing at a political joke builds a we through shared transgression and shared frame breaking. And one reinforces existing bonds. The other creates new bonds by challenging power. So what is social cohesion actually? Conventionally, we often say it's the glue that holds groups together. Shared identity, agreed upon rules, mutual obligation, common symbols, etc. But from a frame-based perspective, we can be more precise. Social cohesion is the collective maintenance of a shared interpretive frame that defines who we are, what counts as belonging, what the rules are, and how violations are managed. In this sense, cohesion is not stable. It's constantly being maintained, tested, and renegotiated through play. For instance, your family doesn't stay a family just because you share DNA. You stay a family because you maintain the frame. Through phone calls, meals together, inside jokes, shared memories, rituals, all of that is play. You're constantly saying to each other, we are still we. A nation doesn't cohere through government alone. It coheres because people play together. They play nationalism through flags, anthems, songs, and shared stories. A protest movement doesn't cohere through agreement alone. It coheres when people play together, when they create slogans, jokes, rituals, symbols. They play a new frame into being. Cohesion is thus an active, ongoing process. It's built and maintained through play. Now I want to suggest 3 different kinds of play and what they do to social cohesion. First, ritual play can be thought of as the reinforcement of existing frames. Think of family game night. You play the same game every Sunday. Or national ceremonies, religious rituals, annual traditions. In America, we need only think of Thanksgiving. The annual Thanksgiving meal involves highly ritualized behavior. Family gathering on the fourth Thursday in November, preparing specific foods like turkey, mashed potato, stuffing, cranberry sauce, holding hands for prayer or gratitude sharing, and watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. This demonstrates ritualistic play through rule-bound behavior. What to eat, when to gather, voluntary participation with real stakes, emotional consequences of absence, perhaps, and suspension without abolition. Ordinary time stops, but gravity and social hierarchies remain. The function of this type of play is boundary reinforcement. By playing the same games the same way, you're communicating to each other. We are still we. We haven't changed. We still belong to each other. Humor can appear in ritual play. You might laugh together at the same family jokes every game night. But the primary work isn't humor. It's repetition. It's reassurance. You're saying, this is how we do things, and we still do them this way. The temporal logic in this case is cyclical. You return to the same game, the same ritual, the same jokes. So cohesion is maintained through ritual return. For social stability, this is huge. But ritual play reinforces whatever hierarchies, exclusions, or power imbalances are already built into the frame. For example, if women aren't invited to the game night, the frame reinforces that exclusion. So ritual can be oppressive. The second kind of play is very different, transgressive humorous play. Examples include political satire, carnival, mockery of authority, and comic subversion in subordinated communities. The function in this case is boundary testing and negotiation. You're asking, what if things were different? What if we laughed at what we're supposed to respect? And what if we inverted the hierarchy just for a moment? This is what Russian literary theorist Mikhail Bakhtin called the carnivalesque. In carnival, normal hierarchies are temporarily inverted. The king becomes the fool becomes the king. People laugh at what they're normally supposed to respect, and the frame is exposed as contingent. Inside the group, this kind of play accelerates bonding dramatically. When you and I laugh together at an authority figure, when we break the frame together, that laughter creates intense complicity. But toward power, it opens what Simon Critchley calls dissensus communis. I think I said that right, dissensus communis. We're revealing what we share, a common understanding of power, while simultaneously saying, but this could be different. The joke communicates on two channels. Inside the group, it bonds us. Toward power, it destabilizes. But here's the risk. Humorous transgressive play stretches cohesion. It can regenerate it by allowing subordinate groups to critique power without direct confrontation. But it can also fracture cohesion if the humor punches down, if it's not testing the powerful, but mocking the already vulnerable. The third kind of play, this is a rather fun one, is emergent play. Play that literally creates new groups and new identities that didn't exist before. Think of gaming communities. A person sits down to play Dungeons and Dragons, and suddenly they're part of a community that crosses geographical boundaries, language barriers, and age differences. They develop their own vocabulary, their own inside jokes, their own norms. The game creates a frame, and people find belonging within it that they might never have found in physical proximity. Or think of fandoms, communities bonded over shared love of a book, a show, a film. These are new social formations. Without the shared text to play with, this community wouldn't exist. The function in this case is the creation of entirely new worlds and entirely new identities. But, and this is crucial, emergent play in the digital sphere is increasingly governed by algorithms. The game doesn't determine who sees what, the algorithm does. The frame is opaque. We're playing within rules we can't actually see. If cohesion is structured by play, and play is increasingly algorithmically determined, then the power to decide who gets invited into the game, who sees what, who belongs, that power is outsourced to code. It's invisible. We can't negotiate it. We can't change the rules because we don't see them. In other words, if play is how cohesion happens, and algorithms control which plays are visible to whom, then algorithms control who can belong. Democracy requires visibility and negotiability. Algorithmic play removes both. So every form of play creates inclusion and exclusion simultaneously. Groups form through shared play, but that we only exists in relation to a they. The people who don't know the rules, who don't understand the inside jokes, who can't participate in the shared frame, they are outside the group. Knowing how to play marks belonging. In African philosophy, Ubuntu, which means I am because we are, emphasizes communal identity and collective belonging. And that's powerful stuff. But here's what often gets obscured. That collective identity is necessarily bounded. It creates strong cohesion within the community precisely by defining who is part of the we. This is not a flaw in play. This is the mechanism through which play creates cohesion. Inclusion requires exclusion. The ethical question is whether that exclusion is just. Have people chosen to be outside? Would the group welcome them if they learned the rules? Or is the group deliberately keeping people out, using play as a weapon of exclusion? That's the question you have to ask yourselves. Because play is never outside politics. It's how politics happens. And there's three ways this operates. First, satire as political pedagogy. When someone creates satire, absurdist comedy, mockery of power, creative critique, they're not just critiquing, or they're not just entertaining. They're teaching people a new way to think about power and authority. They're showing that what seems inevitable is actually arbitrary. Political satirists are teachers. They're teaching people to see the contingency of power. Once you see that something is contingent, that it could be otherwise, you can imagine changing it. Political satire thus opens imaginative space. It teaches consciousness. Second, carnival as structural resistance. When protest movements use play in carnival, they're using it as a tool to reshape what's politically possible. Think of street theatre at protests, creative signs with wordplay, absurdist direct actions. These are all uses of play to open new political space. But why? Because politics operates through frames. If you can change what people can imagine is possible through play, you can change politics. Third, counter publics and inside jokes. Marginalized groups use insider jokes and shared humor to build alternative communities and to teach each other new ways of understanding power. Enslaved communities developed humor as a survival mechanism. LGBTQ plus communities, before legal recognition, used inside jokes to build solidarity. Indigenous communities under colonization preserved knowledge and dignity through satirical performance and coded laughter. These weren't frivolous. They were building counter-publics, spaces of alternative meaning-making within oppressive systems. They were decolonial practices, we might say, maintaining your own epistemology, your right to interpret the world differently from how power tells you to. The core takeaway here is that if power is negotiated through play, then changing play changes power. And play is one of the few spaces where subordinated groups have some agency. Now, the bigger questions. Let me pull back for a second and ask, why does any of this matter? Here are 3 stakes. First, cohesion is built through play. Families, communities, nations, movements, all of these cohere through shared games and play. If you ignore this, you don't understand how society actually works. You don't understand why people stay together or why they fracture. Ignore play, and you're missing the engine of social cohesion. Second, power is negotiated through play, not just imposed from above. This is hope-giving, actually. It means that change is possible. If society is playing out through games, and games can change, then society can change. Power looks monolithic until you understand that it's been constantly negotiated, maintained, and contested through play. Once you see that, you see cracks where change is possible. Third, humor is intensified frame play. So satire, sarcasm, mockery, absurdist performance, these aren't frivolous or decorative. They're how power gets negotiated, how alternatives get imagined, and how new possibilities become thinkable. Take humor seriously, and you understand resistance. You understand how subordinated groups survive and sometimes transform. All of this converges on the following questions, and this is my last slide because I'm sure I'm running out of time. These are my closing questions. Who controls the frame? Who decides the rules? Who gets to play? Who gets to laugh? And crucially, who gets to change the game? Because games and play are never innocent, they're always about power. They're the framework through which societies are built, maintained, and transformed. 3 nested questions for you to sit with. First, who gets invited into our games? Which people, communities, ideas are allowed to participate in the play that structures our cohesion? Who is excluded by default? Second, whose frames are we allowed to play with and whose are protected? Some frames we can mock and transgress. Others are defended, sacred, untouchable. Who decides that boundary? Third, when we laugh together, who are we building cohesion with? And at whose expense? Every inside joke creates a we. But who is that we? And who becomes the they? Are we laughing at those in power or at those already vulnerable? These questions determine who belongs, who has power, and what futures are imaginable. Thank you very much, everyone.
Fab. Thanks, Jenna.
I need a sip of water now. Goodness, I was so worried I'd go over time after my
No.
technological blunder.
No, perfect timing. Thank you. Okay, so we have quite a bit of time, sort of 20 minutes or so for chatting and discussion. I think either just use the hand up function. I think I'll be able to see it. Or if you find that I'm not responding to you, jump into the chat or otherwise put your video on. So those are the 3 ways you can attract attention to enter into the discussion. Okay, so anyone jumping in to begin with?
And I just want to add, Andrea, this is very much a conversation because everything that I've presented, it's just musings I've been having. So it would be lovely to get other people's perspective, whether they agree, whether they don't, or how to just look through a different lens. Because I've been looking through humor, but I see Massey. Bye, Massey. Thanks for joining.
Okay. Um,
I like
okay,
different
yeah.
lenses, different views.
So, all right, then I'm going to kick off just to kind of get the conversation going. So obviously what's on my mind is this idea of creating a big game for as a kind of engagement project. And I'm kind of interested in what kind of game it would be and whether we could include some form of humor in it. And this is very tricky terrain because humor is very dangerous, I think. So
Yes.
my thinking is, okay, if I were to create a game which had a kind of carnivalesque aspect to it, now today in our city, uh, what would we be laughing at? Because we punching up is pointless because our politicians are ridiculous anyway. So laughing at them is, in a sense, weak.
It's useless.
It's and
Laughter
useless.
that has no reach, in a sense.
Yeah. So it's kind of tricky, like who should we be? And this is an open question. Who should we be laughing at now in our time, in our city, or in our cities in South Africa or whatever? I mean, who do you guys laugh at? Or who do you think you're allowed to laugh at or not allowed to?
You know, Andrea, I'm going to kick it off. I would say nowadays, especially here and globally, just with woke culture and the way culture is at the moment, I would say we can only laugh at ourselves. That would be only ourselves or something that every single human can laugh at or laugh about. For example, environmental comedy. I think we're all aware of the environmental crisis, the climate crisis. Every single human on this planet is exposed to it. So I feel like that is a global topic that could warrant laughing at or laughing with. It's not a laughing matter, but if you want to take it seriously, there are some approaches you can take with humor. But otherwise, I think laughing at ourselves, laughing at our own mistakes that have led to, again, I'm going to mention global crisis or the environment. What have we done wrong? We've all done wrong. Yes, big tech companies, I mean, the amount of carbon we use compared to millionaires in the global north is nothing. But we're all in the same boat, regardless. So that would be my thoughts. Gary, I'm going to tag you in. You always have something to say.
It's difficult to say that the environment is a laughing matter, but
A
uh,
laugh, a laughing matter to be taken seriously in the sense of laughing at the situation we find ourselves in, because, or laughing at the fact that people aren't taking it seriously.
no, I mean, look, Don't Look Up, the movie Don't Look Up was comical satire that was used. It actually became prophetic vision in the sense that it anticipated the Trump administration and what's been happening within the Trump administration. So um, uh, yeah, so I mean, it was useful. It was useful in that sense to bring about a sort of easing into the topic and easing into it. So to Andrea's question, what can we laugh at in our city? It's I think you have to define what kind of laughter you mean. Hysterical, sort of jokeresque type laughter as you edge over the cliff face. I was at a sewage outflow this morning, which has been flowing for about a year out of one of our sewage works, which is the one that we actually visited on the tributaries thing. And that sewage works, that plant is now totally dysfunctional. So it's just raw sewage pouring out to the sea. So you can hear me laughing because it's a
Yeah, I was going to say, not why. What is that? I mean, yeah, it's a nervous laughter, I imagine.
Well, I mean, you can see like condoms and things in the water and that kind of, the sewage. It's a, it's a hysterical laughter. It's a laughter in this sense acts as a sort of release, not as a critique per se, I mean, you could laugh at the administration of the city, the political system. Um, so today, one of the upcoming opponents in the forthcoming local government election visited a water treatment works and claimed that the mayor had never been to that one. At about the same time, the city's communication system puts out the mayor visiting the same water treatment works that has been critiqued. So that was a funny moment. But I mean, the nature of the issues is that our water supply to the city is breaking down and hasn't been maintained properly. So yeah, look, it's a hysterical laughter. That's what we can laugh at.
Yeah, and not playful. So if we're bringing this back to the idea of play, as Jenna said, there's oh, what was it? I can't remember now, but there's like humor and play are not necessarily bound together. That sometimes, what is it? I don't know. I don't know if there is play in this. Okay, we're kind of come to a kind of, oh my gosh, we can't think straight. Our minds are spinning. So Olivia has something in the comment. Olivia, would you like to speak to that? And then I'll go to Alex after that.
Yes, thank you very much. I really loved the presentation. Thank you, Jenna.
Thanks,
What I was saying in my comment is that I do believe that each time we laugh together, we are laughing at somebody or something, but we're also laughing at ourselves because laughter creates that consciousness that we are also part of that which we are laughing at. In some way, we are to blame. So that consciousness builds the togetherness with which we criticize, we advocate for change, and also negotiate change generally. But the laughing is not just a creation of a bond. It is also a way in which our consciousness is raised, so that we are not only laughing at others, but we're also laughing at ourselves in a way. Thank you.
Thanks, Olivia. I do agree with you, very much so. When we do laugh at others, we're also laughing at, often laughing at ourselves, because what we see in other people, they say is often a mirror. So what we're laughing about with other people, we often see in ourselves, and it's a feeling of we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat. When we're suffering here, when our water is cut off, when the electricity has gone off, we all laugh together. We're all sitting in the same boat.
Just a kind of just before we go to first Alex and then Jason, but also just bear in mind there is that kind of mockery that laughs at other people in order to hurt and exclude. But often I think what is interesting there is that you're probably laughing at what you see in another person as something horrible in yourself that you fear, maybe. And then you try to laugh to exclude that other person, and also to just try to kind of exclude it in yourself, maybe something like that. So yeah, really interesting. So let's add some voices to this conversation. I think first Alex, and then we'll go to Jason.
Thanks, Jennalee. That was fabulous. It was so interesting to think of certain rituals as forms of play, and that not all forms of play are necessarily things that we do because they're enjoyable. I hope that I can return to the presentation online, because there were some things that I think are going to be very helpful for me in my own work. I was wondering what your thoughts are on forms of laughter, forms of humor, that arise not as a function of an intention to hurt, but as a function of intimacy and affection. So in the sense, a kind of lover's discourse where no one else knows what two people are saying, but there's a lot of shared laughter that isn't, I think, necessarily premised on the reliance of an outsider, but that it is kind of like a dance that two people are doing with each other. And then the other thing I'd be very interested in your thoughts on are how what we find funny changes. So what personally, I'll just keep it, I'll limit it to that, is when I was a teenager, I found certain films funny.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be able to last watching the same film. Yeah, exactly. So, and I'm wondering what that means about our sense of humor. I wonder if that's related to our ethical sensibility, and that we will find, if we find things funny at different times of our lives, does that mean that a sense of humor can be refined or matured? I don't know, thoughts on that in your framework.
Yes. Thanks so much, Alex. These are such good questions. I'm glad there's a recording, because I actually need to take some of these down. So I'm more going to have a discussion with you than a straight out answer, because I don't have a straight out answer, but just thoughts in my mind. With regard to a sense of humor, yes, I think a sense of humor can be refined. I know since I started studying humor, I've picked up different cues. Like when I watch a series or a movie, I pick up on different cues. Where someone says a joke, I pick up on the timing, like how long before the punchline comes. So I've actually learned to recognize different things, and because I recognize them, I appreciate it more than I didn't appreciate before or didn't notice before. So definitely a sense of humor can be refined, and I think it's also the group of people you're with. So many people have a different sense of humor. Some people have an immature sense of humor. Some people have not naughty, there's another word, a crude sense of humor. So I think the different kinds of people in your life bring a different senses of humor, and then you refine your own sense of humor. So I do agree with that. The other thing that you mentioned, what was the other thing?
The other thing was on laughter as arising from intimacy and the transparency that comes with intimacy. So that I laugh in response to knowing something that others don't know about someone, and vice versa.
Okay, so I would see that as an inside joke almost. Like we would be insiders and outsiders. And the funny thing about that is when you take it to a level of intimacy, sometimes you don't even have to say anything. You can just look at a person and there will be that slight eye, and it's like you almost know what they're thinking. And it's often because of something that's happened. It's a shared memory or a shared experience. So it's something I actually haven't explored.
That's a lovely example. That's a really nice example of that kind of like almost telepathy.
Yes,
that you have with someone, and I suppose there is an insider-outsider dynamic, but I suppose the shared laughter, what's primary in that instance is the intimacy, not
Yes.
necessarily the exclusion. Although people can't be in on the joke, you could
Yes.
explain why it's funny
Yes.
as an attempt to include. But I suppose I think that, and just thinking of social cohesion, because those moments of intimacy are profound. Anyway, so I'll just...
Yes, and I think it's also that you brought up, especially when it's two people, because it just tightens that cohesion, because it's only you and one other person experiencing it. And you actually mentioned something else. We were talking about cringe. I watched the other night, like when I was a teenager, I loved American Pie. I thought it was the funniest thing on earth. And I watched it the other night with my son, who's now a teenager. I thought, okay, let's start now, just seeing some of them, not all the parts, but some of them. I was so cringe. I thought to myself, how on this green earth did I ever watch it? It's not even worth watching. So I think definitely as you grow older and you're exposed to more different types of humor and different senses of humor from people, your sense of humor matures and you expect more and you have a higher level of expectation. Because yes, definitely looking at past things is absolute cringeworthy.
Okay, let's expand the conversation a bit. Jason, and then Glenn after that.
Oh, good, I'm visible. Thanks, Andrea, and thanks, Jenna. There's a lot in your frames, and I'm probably not going to be able to keep up. So I'm glad that you've got so many interesting things. So I just want to note two things, which I think are current preoccupations of mine. The one is I thought it was really interesting the way Andrea brought up, and you agreed, this idea that laughter or ridicule of the people in power seems almost pointless. And that makes me think about the anthropological argument that there's a certain fixed purpose to mockery in cultures, and it's to counteract the idea of power entrenching itself. That we traditionally, hunters come home and are mocked so that they don't get a big sense of themselves for their accomplishments. And it's proportionate to the fact that they've achieved something significant, but they must be kept in proportion. And I think about the value of mocking billionaires and mocking the rich as out of touch. And I think that there's a role there, but it also feels in our contemporary society like mocking the powerful is pointless because they're insulated against it. And the sort of existential fear there is that the urge to build solidarity around a shared antagonism toward the powerful is just a faction building identity reinforcing mechanism, and it's at certain scales of society that mechanism is directly connected to something that functions, and we live in a context in which it doesn't. It's this vestigial thing that has no traction. And I wonder, we talk about, I think, embedded in this question of, is there a version of humor that, or of this playfulness that can be made effective? Is this question of the deeper, scarier existential question: do we live in a society where that vestigial urge serves no purpose but can be exploited into making us feel like we've accomplished something through our mockery? So that's kind of part one. And part two is a related concern that I had, because I had a fascinating argument with a libertarian yesterday, not an argument, a long discussion in which our different politics overlapped and disagreed and agreed in different ways. But one of the things that we both agreed on, we were talking about AI-generated art. Because a friend of mine generated a protest song about Iran using AI, and he asked me what I thought about it. And I said, this was made for an audience of you. Something that has to be workshopped for broader appeal, seeking consensus, would have had to have paid attention to how to repeat the core idea along with the chorus and things like that. This was something that sounds utterly convincing to you because it replicates an audience of one's particular political beliefs. And this got me quite concerned about the idea that people can increasingly generate art that silos us. That we can, so following my previous worry, we can have kinds of art. I haven't tried to get an AI to generate a joke for me, and I think I'd probably feel a bit grossed out if I did. But I could imagine my own jester, an agent that functions as a jester, telling me jokes that make me laugh in the way we've talked about, this dark, bleak, individualized, siloed laughter, and does not perform the function of connecting me to anyone else, sharing an experience, building a sense of solidarity or connection. And so I think those are two instances maybe of the same concern, that it's possible for humor to be sort of masturbatory. It's possible for it to connect us with one another, or for it to be that we stimulate for ourselves. And in social media and siloing contexts, we're actually bowling alone and thinking that that's an accomplishment that connects us in some bigger way. I don't think that's specific to humor, but those were the things that were on my mind, and a lot of what you were saying connected for me.
Well, Jason, first I must say you worry far too much. Everything you're saying to me, you seem like someone who doesn't get much sleep at night because your brain keeps going all the time. Because just in this short time, you have brought up so many questions I could unpack. I think that could be a whole seminar, everything you just said. But something I wanted to point out with humor in particular is this is the difficult line with humor. It is a double-edged sword, always. There's two sides of the same coin. To what extent can humor have actual consequences, actual positive consequences? And to what extent is it a way to mitigate action and just keep us going with the flow and from taking action and to just appease us? Both are true. It's just the fact of who's going to be mobilized. And I think the problem nowadays with digital technology and social media is, in some ways, it gives us this vast worldwide reach. But in other ways, it is so isolating. So again, I don't even know how to answer your question, because I have the same concerns and I have the same thoughts, and I don't actually know how one would approach that. It's always oscillating between the two.
Yeah, Jenna, ethics of complexity or ethics of ambiguity. We'll have to all go and study Simone de Beauvoir.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm afraid we're sort of edging towards the end of time. I'd love to hear Glenn's voice just as a final question.
Hi, everyone. So great to see your faces again and to be part of this great community. A fascinating seminar series, Andrea, and well done to you, Jenna, for setting the bar so high. Very interesting stuff. I'm not going to be long. I just wanted to say to you, your talk just got me thinking perhaps also about what could be a rich contribution that I could make to the seminar series later in the second half of the year, because in your slides, there were very fascinating remarks about play and ritual, and not all humor is play and vice versa, and so forth. But I'm thinking about the concept of sexuality and how play is often introduced in sexual experiences. I'm thinking of the gay and the queer community, where oftentimes in the hookup culture or in cruising culture, you would ask the participant, do you want to play? You see? So there's something fascinating there I might be interested in wanting to unpack. And then also in some fetish communities, there are people who get off on being laughed at. So laughter has to be present in the sex act. I just thought it's worthwhile putting forward there for some things for you to think about as you continue to expand your work. And would it be something you guys would be interested in wanting to unpack a bit more in the seminar if I would speak about it? Thanks so much.
That's interesting, Glenn. Very interesting.
Yeah, and I think so too. And I have to say that with my ex-partner, the having sex was called let's play. So I think that there's all sorts of interesting stuff to be thought about there, and also a whole lot of gaming people, and there's a whole lot of interesting stuff, I think, to be thought about in terms of interpersonal relations and play and gaming and sexuality, certainly. Yeah. So I'm just jumping in there, and then that's a yes. But let's give Jenna the last word.
And the last word for what, Andrea? Was there a question? I didn't get a question. Is this in response to Glenn?
Yes, or just generally. I mean, let's just close off the seminar. We've actually made a good start, and I think we're kind of out of time.
Yes. Well, I didn't think Glenn posed a question as such. It's something I can look into. I must say, humor particularly, because I personally haven't read any books or any articles linking humor and sexuality. So I think that's a very underexplored topic, Glenn. So you've now put a light bulb, a bee in my bonnet, got a bee in my bonnet for me to now go and explore something that I think is a bit untouched, so to speak, excuse the pun. So thank you very much for that. And I think everyone would be very interested in your presentation. So I think you should start with that. And thanks everyone for joining today.
Okay, thanks, Jenna. And thanks, Glenn, for introducing that moment of play into our seminar. You can see where my humor lies. It's always on the edge of something a little bit, yeah. But anyway, all right, everybody, have a wonderful weekend. What a fun start to our seminar. And I'm hoping all of these conversations and ideas are going to percolate for a whole year. And then we will have, in the end, a good idea about how to create a really kind of slightly crazy, fun, playful game. Okay. Thanks, man. Cheers. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.